Hello, everybody. We're here. We have, you all weren't aware, but Erin almost didn't make it. She was at a conference, caught the COVID, um, got the Paxlovid, nice long nap, and was able to make it with us. So we were both Rizel and I were both happy to see her appear in the feed as well. Um, but we, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brian Rinaldi, developer experience engineer at LaunchDarkly. Also started CFE.dev. Um, Erin, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, and I'm Erin. I am currently coming to you live from quarantine in my apartment, but I am a developer community advocate at Label Studio, so I'm in the machine learning and AI space.
And with us, we got Rizel Scarlett of GitHub. You want to do an introduction of yourself, Rizel?
Yeah, sure. I think you kind of mostly said it. My name is Rizel Scarlett. I'm a developer advocate at GitHub. I guess I mostly focus on like Copilot and code spaces, and I'm happy y'all thought it was cool enough to hang out with y'all.
Of course you are. And I've actually had you on. You've been on a couple of CFE presentations as well. So yeah, we love you.
And Copilot and code spaces are two tools I have used in the last 48 hours. So that's like and I quote like your blog post, and I'm like, please read this.
I'm gonna put it in my brag doc.
Perfect. Great. Like if you need anything, I'm often like, please read this, everybody. Do code spaces. Do all the fun stuff.
Yeah, I need Rizel's time for like an hour just to show me how to get the most out of Copilot. Because I read your posts and stuff, and I'm like, I'm using Copilot, but like I feel like that prompt engineering kind of thing. It's just like I haven't quite gotten there yet.
I got you. And I want to like create a more detailed blog post. Like the first one I did on prompt engineering was like super short, and I was like, it wasn't super short, but it was just like my random thoughts. But then I didn't realize people were like, oh, I really needed this. I'm like, okay, I'll like expand on it more then.
Yeah, it was great. I actually sent it to a colleague too, who was like, he's like, I feel like I'm not using Copilot to its best abilities, and I'm like, yeah, well, I saw this post and I sent it to him. I'm like, this seems like exactly what we want to do.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, I'm over here like I start thinking of something and then I'm like, time out, I'm just gonna ask Copilot.
No, I'd be doing that with ChatGPT. I have it like open in every browser on my phone, on my laptop. I'm just like, I have a random question. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT or Copilot chat or whatever.
Oh yeah, they're asking for the link to the post. I gotta get this.
Hey,
yeah, it's the best place to get it on DevTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't put it anywhere else.
Yeah. Okay.
And if
working
you guys
on
are
that.
tuning in,
yeah.
We've got a Discord server as well. And I'm dropping all the links that we'll mention today from the chat in the Discord server as well. So just join the cfe.dev Discord server. And there is a devrel channel. We've just created a thread that has not only the posts from today, but all the links and cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Do you have that link, Rizel?
I put it in the private chat.
Oh, perfect. I'll grab it from there. All right, I'm grabbing it. I'm going to put it in the chat here. All right. This is the post that we were talking about, this prompt engineering. Okay, so although we're actually here not to talk about so much about prompt engineering, I mean, I'd love to talk about that some more, but we do want to talk about devrel. So I mean, I'd say, you've been in devrel what, like 2 years, right?
I think a year and like 8 months, 7 months. September will be my 2-year mark.
So tell us a little bit about like what kind of brought you into the devrel space. What is it you like about the role that drew you to it?
Yeah. Okay. Here's like my path. First, I signed up to study psychology in college, and then I was like, I don't have money for the next semester. And then people were talking about, in order to like actually have a whole career in psychology, you have to get a master's. And I was like, never mind. So then I like dropped out of college, and then I started Googling how to make more money. and tech kept popping up.
I like this. This story is great already.
Yeah, tech kept popping up. And at first I was going to sign up for computer science, but I saw that one of the requirements was like linear algebra and all this other stuff that sounded really scary because I'm not really like math. I don't know. I've never been really that great at math. So then I went for the IT route. So I got my associates in IT. I was a help desk technician. I was like, this is super fun. But then I kind of started getting bored after a while because I felt like I like understood all the things, and I was like, I need more challenge. And people were talking about APIs and all that cool stuff, and I was trying it out. And I was like, I want to be a software engineer. So I went to coding boot camp, and then I became a software engineer, and then I got my computer science degree. But I kind of missed like helping people directly. So I like started helping, or I started this nonprofit with other folks that was like teaching women of color how to code. And then I was like, dang, I wish I could do this like for my full-time job and get 6 figures. And then I started seeing like people on Twitter like Angie Jones and Brian Douglas doing talks and like teaching people. And I was like, I think I want to be that. But I just didn't know what it was. And then I like stalked their LinkedIn profiles. I figured out what it was, and I just kept applying to the jobs until somebody said yes. That's the story.
That's pretty amazing. Like
I love how you had like a target to go to, because I think like I ended up in it on accident, but not on purpose. Like I was like, I remember they were like, you are head of open source community, and I was like, great, how to open source community. like that was my path, was like the accidental ended up that I didn't know it was a job.
Yeah. I hear a lot of people have that. I'm like, I wish I accidentally got a job. They're like, hey, you're head of this. I'll be like, wow, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a definite like,
it was scary-ish kind of like.
Yeah, it was terrifying. It was terrifying. Especially because I was like, what? But I think in developer advocacy, like, you are, one of the things that I like absolutely am always amazed by you is like, holy cow, the content that you create is like, you're a content machine. Like, I'm very impressed by that. Very impressed. How do you approach making content that's so human, and like, what do you think the long-term value of this content is? Because sometimes that's where I struggle, is like, I can make this blog post, but it'll be out of date in 6 months, and then I'm gonna cry about it.
That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like the way that I create content is just like how I would be talking to somebody like this. Like I don't know if that makes any sense, but I feel like maybe sometimes some people put a lot of pressure on themselves to make a blog post sound a certain way. And I feel like I just write how I talk, and I don't do that much editing or anything. I just publish it, and sometimes it has typos, and people message me and they're like, you have typos in this. But I think that helps to speed up the process for me. And like, I mean, I use Grammarly and stuff like that, but I feel like I have like a pretty good like standard for how I will write my blog posts. Like I always think about who's my specific audience going to be, because I think one time I was having a struggle where I was like, I want it to be for beginners, but I also want it to be for experts. And like, it was like hard, like the blog post became like super long and hard to really relate to it. And then I just started focusing on my audience, wrote out the outline, spoke in my own like authentic voice. And I mean, if it gets outdated, it gets outdated. I try to focus on stuff that I hear my job, like they have product meetings or something called product club, and I just focus on what they say that they really want to push out. So like, if they're not talking about GitHub packages, I'm not writing anything about GitHub packages. But I'm like, I hear them talking about Copilot. I'm like, all right, I could like try that one out. So I guess that's how I approach it. I don't know.
So it sounds like it's one of the things we get in this show is like how each different company tends to have a different approach to DevRel.
Yeah.
So it sounds like for you, you get like a lot of freedom to kind of pick and choose where you want to put your focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when I started, because I started off as a junior developer advocate. So it was kind of like, do what you want and learn. So that gave me a lot of like freedom to just be like, I want to learn this. I want to create this. I mean, now it's starting to become like, this is your focus, Rizel. Try to focus on that. But I've never really been that good at focusing, to be honest.
But I don't know. No, so I actually think I'm going to get on my soapbox here. This is a new take I have coming, and this is influenced by recent conference attendees where I'm like, I don't like, much like you, like, I don't have a technical background. I'm self-taught. I learned by the school of Google, but less in any other way than crap. It was enough to figure out how to get my job done and not let some dude bro run me over. It was kind of like how I learned. And being told my code sucks a lot and breaking things a lot. But I think getting on my soapbox here, I think taking that newbie approach is actually really helpful from an educational standpoint. So like I moved into the ML industry about 8 months ago now. And so like when I first went in, I was open in my like interviews of like, I've written Python. I've came from data journalism, and Python's weirdly the only programming language I've had any formal instruction in. And that was because I took 1 semester of data journalism. So I mean, is that a lot of Python knowledge? No. Is it the packages and the things that relate to like basic data viz and like using APIs? Yes. And have I worked with data in other cases? Yes. But I was new to the world of machine learning and entering a machine learning industry. Yeah. But I think it gave me a leg up in many ways because I'm like, why isn't anybody talking about this? Like, this is like cool. You guys are all talking about these really high end applications, but like, we need to break down how they're working. Or why is this important? Or like sometimes I feel like I say dumb questions in quotations because there are no dumb questions, but like those are sometimes the most valuable questions.
Yeah. I agree. That's kind of like my interview for the role at GitHub. I was supposed to do a presentation on something GitHub could probably improve or how I would present something. It was mostly a rant of like how they like tell everybody to contribute to open source, but as someone like me who never had contributed to open source, like I don't really feel like the steps are there or like there's a lot of explanations. So like that's what I dived into when I first started GitHub, and I wasn't sure if I was like offending everybody in the interview, but they were like, yeah, we agree. So I agree with you, Erin, where it's like like, you know, we're talking at a high level sometimes. And then it's like, what about the people who have never done this? Whether they're a beginner overall or like a beginner in that specific topic.
Yeah, I've definitely seen even in my career that you know, we have a tendency, especially as we, you know, get deeper in the role to like, you know, in devrel, like to kind of feel like we have to dig deep into and come out with this is going to be so awesome. It's going to show how to do this. And it's all really difficult when, you know, I still think the large majority of the audience is still like, okay, but that's cool, but I don't even know how to get started. Because, you know, and we sometimes can ignore that beginner content in favor of like things that look impressive to, you know, to our Twitter friends and stuff like that. Like, you know, the echo chamber that is sometimes I think devrel gets stuck in a little bit of this echo chamber where, you know, we're talking to each other. I say on a show about devrel for devrel people, but this.
And Brian, like you and I have had this conversation, I believe before of like, and one of the things, like I just came from PyCon and PyData, and they had a whole thing of like, what's your favorite code editor to write in? And people would be like, Notebook. And then they'd be like, Jupyter. And then they'd be like, Visual Studio Code. And then it would be like, who's still writing on Vim? And it's like, that's such insider jokes.
Yeah.
But like, even it's not fun to sit there and like everybody else is like laughing at a joke that like, I'm fortunate now that I understand, but like
before
that's like, a joke that like, even like a year ago, I may have not picked up on and that's like, how can we make this a more inclusive space? Like, I remember very distinctly, I was actually scared away from being in a community role. This is in the last 2 years, because I had feedback from someone on engineering and I was on the devrel community side. And I had put a pull request and didn't format it completely or correctly. And I got like chewed a new one. And it's like, well, great. The code was technically there, but like I formatted a pull request wrong. And that's enough to scare people away.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you could have just walked me through that and how to like do it better rather than rip me out.
Yeah. So Rizel, like actually that you know, to Erin's point, what are some of the things that you presented, and where do you think there's still work to be done on that whole kind of trying to bring people into contributions and open source?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first to what Erin said earlier, I relate because I used to have a software engineering job, and I told them I wanted to be a developer advocate. They're like, "What are your career goals?" And they would chew my code out a lot. And then they're like, "To be a developer advocate, you actually have to be a good software engineer." And I was like, "Okay." But anyways, back to the question that you asked on like what I brought up to them. I think, man, I don't really remember the presentation that much, but I think I talked to them more about like I'm not sure understanding how to get my pull request accepted. I'm not understanding necessarily how to like find beginner repositories to contribute to. I'm not understanding how to even ask questions to people because I didn't even know how to use Discord. So I would just be in the repo and I'd be like, all right, I want to pick up this issue, but I want more details on it. How do I get in contact with the maintainer? I think I had like downloaded Discord and then it said I couldn't message the maintainer and I was like, I don't know how to use this. So like those are like problems I brought up. I brought up like the lack of diversity as well because it can look scary to like just message a random white man and be like, hey, I'm trying to write some code to your thing. And then also I had this like pre like I didn't never hear that like thought like open source was actually mean, but I like made it up in my mind that like if I open up a pull request, people are gonna laugh at me because at my jobs, my past jobs, it wasn't always like positive feedback or like here's how to improve it. It would just be like this sucks, and I'd be like, oh, okay. So I was like, I don't want that experience in the public. So like the way I tried to approach it was like it's gonna be friendly. Here's some like beginner repositories. I tried to do this, but I couldn't keep it up. Was like bringing people on a stream who never contributed to open source before, and me walking them like through their first PR, which was fun, but it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think I think the work to be done is I don't know if I even made that big of an impact there. I think those things are still problems where it's like people want to contribute, but they still don't know it's necessarily that friendly. I've tried as much as possible to show that, but I can only reach a certain amount of audience. And then like how do they get the help? How do they get someone to like walk them through it so that they can feel confident doing it? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, some of the like I've seen a trend towards putting some starter issues for people
Mhm.
on some bigger projects, and I think that's a great idea. Something I've always personally advocated. I mean, I will say I haven't done enough or much of it, I guess, myself, but for people who want is like just start with the docs. Like,
Yeah.
the docs are a great way, especially because as somebody new, you tend to be like the person who recognizes the stumbling blocks for somebody else who come in not knowing the tool. Um, so and it's never the thing that I think seems like you want to be like brings you much glory is contributing improvements to the docs, but it's I think it's a great way to kind of start and even build that relationship with the people who own the project.
And how do you treat a doc pull request? And I think this is a huge one. Like so often you're like, oh my goodness, look at this person. And like, I know I'm come from an open source organization. Like we had 2 pull requests this month, and one was a docs pull request and one was a feature pull request. And how do you treat them? Like you should treat them equivalent. Because if you don't, like, I recently contributed to actually the crowd.dev, and I'm going to give them a shout out because they did a very good job of this. So the crowd.dev repo, I noticed a typo. I was playing around in their software and I noticed a typo, and I was like, hey, I know enough front end that I can literally just correct this typo. Like I'm doing no other code edits, but correcting a typo that is in their front end code.
Yeah.
And they sent me an email. They sent me a shout out. They shouted me out on another platform, but it was like all these little things go a long way, even though I didn't build a single extension and it took me probably 15 minutes to contribute that.
Wow. That's awesome.
But it's like, that's what we need. Like we need more things like that. Like, or even like we had recently a contributor to our repo be like, you're missing a guide on this. Is it okay if I write this? And I'm like, yes, like, please, like, thank you for telling me. And I would never have known if you didn't tell me that individual use case.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm not using our product 110 different ways every day. I try to, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and 8 of which I'm working, and it's not all the time on that.
Yeah. Non-code contributions are really important, and I wish more people, more potential contributors knew that too. Like there. I know a lot of times we're like, oh, we got to go for the code, but like you all mentioned, like docs, translations are always needed. Design. I always wonder though, like how do open source maintainers really handle like design contributions? Because to me, I often see them like contract people out rather than like get a design contribution in. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, if I were creating an open source project, I'd love design contributions because it is one area where I fall down. And actually, like I will say, even in all my projects, it is the biggest stumbling block to getting started. Is like I can build the thing, I just can't design it. And it's such a it's so difficult. But okay, I want to, if you don't mind, I want to switch gears a little bit because I am really curious about Copilot. We talked a little bit about it, but also like on the topic of like how do you think having AI coding assistants like that is going to change the way we approach like devrel? I mean, because part of that is teaching people how to do sometimes these simple things, and how to build apps and stuff like that. I mean, is it something you think? Obviously, you have to talk about the product because that's something you all sell. But like, is it something? What do you feel about like, if I'm teaching somebody how to do something, and as part of my job, like how does a coding assistant end up, taking a part of that, or including coding is like AI assistant code snippets in that were generated in a post and things like that?
Interesting question. I mean, one thing for me is like, at least during demos, it's a little less scary because I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get the code, but then Copilot has it, so I'm just like tabbing and typing. That is an interesting question of like, how is it going to affect how we do stuff? I think I encourage using it because I'm going to write a blog post on like how to create a Google Chrome extension, but using Copilot, and I think we can like write comments, but then and show the code that it generated, but also don't forget to explain what that code is doing so the person can actually learn from it. I don't think it will hurt. It will just give more context and help people to feel like more empowered and sped up, because either way you see a blog post, at least for me, I don't know about other people, I see a blog post, I read a little bit, and then I just start copying and pasting and hoping that it's working. So it's at least nice to like have that comment at the top or be like, oh, okay, this is how it generated it. And like I think it might get people a little bit more excited about like coding, especially if they're coming from a beginner standpoint. I hope I answered that right.
Yeah. No, I think that's a perfect answer. And I think I'm gonna bounce off of that, because I think from the way that you answered that is very much looking at Copilot just like another tool. And I think 10 years from now, let's fast forward, we've done everything and we're all just magical badasses or whatever in our own respective fields, because I think that's obviously how it's going to go. Predicting magic ball here.
10 years from now, I'm not going to be in my field anymore, but that's okay.
Brian's like, I'm out. I don't know. Maybe I won the lottery. And I'm like, I'm retired. It's like, we're already in our own, like, let's pretend like we're all like, whatever, in a private island and reflecting on this, with the mad success of this podcast. This episode alone. But I think all of that being said is like, will it just be considered like another tool that we use in our toolkit? Like, think of how Visual Studio Code, VS Code, like really, or Atom even, revolutionized coding for many people. Like, I barely use the terminal now. Like, the terminal terrifies me 97% of the days. I'm like, there's somewhere a live stream video of me putting things, it's 45 minutes of me putting things in the wrong folder using terminal, because I was like, I'm going to do this tutorial in terminal, watch me go. And it's me putting things in the wrong folder. 45 minutes. It's embarrassing. But tools like VS Code really made it easier. And like, do you think that Copilot is just the next generation of these types of tools?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, that's what GitHub is aiming for. I think sometimes like when the some of the user feedback I've seen on Twitter is them like saying, "Oh my God, it's going to take our jobs," blah blah blah. Like, I really don't think it's going to do that. It's just a tool, just like how in VS Code you have like the little autocomplete thing. Like, you don't have to accept the autocomplete suggestion it gives you. You just have to pay attention and be like, nope, that's not what I want, or yes, that's what I want. Same thing with Copilot. It's just another tool in our toolbox to help us. And I don't remember what it's called. I'm calling it autocomplete, but you know when you like start typing and you do dot whatever and it creates a method. Yeah, that thing.
That's autocomplete in my brain. So
Sasha has a question. He says he finds it interesting that developers are open to Copilot generated code, but not to like general code editors design code. So like things that basically, you know, we're fine with having the AI spit out code for us, but then tools that are like, hey, I'm going to just do this kind of visual design and have it generate an app for me, tends to be like, you know, get kind of derisive looks from developers sometimes, I think.
Interesting.
I'm rewording what he said, but that's I would agree with him on that.
What's the example of the design to code ones? Oh, sorry.
Is that like the Figma? I was going to say, is that like the Figma plugins that are like Figma to whatever CSS?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's essentially, I would say, like the no code type of cool tools.
Oh,
I have a lot of spicy takes here, but I'm gonna let Rizel go first. I'm just gonna sip my tea.
I don't know. Yeah, anything.
Oh, okay. So for me, I have a hard time with low code. This is so dumb, but sometimes I'm like dragging and dropping the stuff, and I'm like, I could have just built this myself. I think it's awesome, right? It looks so cool. Especially the stuff that are like it's low code, not no code. Like the things that incorporate code as well. Like I think Amplification is a cool product. I don't know if y'all know about that, but it like generates the backend code for you plus database. That's cool. But like for me, I feel I have more control with Copilot over what it generates because it's only generating small snippets of code and I can go back and edit it. Whereas like for me with low code, it like generated a whole app and a whole bunch of code, and now I have to go through it and be like, I want to change this. I don't know what file it's in. Like that's my apprehension, but I don't know.
I think there's also like the context, right? Like I can see. I really hadn't given this thought until Sasha asked the question, but I'm like, okay, but you know, with a tool like Copilot or whatever, generally speaking, although people will go into ChatGPT and ask them a question, but like I'm there, I'm typing, and I just put like a comment or whatever, and it's still within my code context, right? Like I'm not moving into a visual tool to then get code, and then you know what I mean. So
yeah. So I'll add the caveat. So go ahead, Brian.
Go.
I was gonna say I have a very strong opinion on this, and I've actually been a creator in. Full disclosure, I have been a content creator in the low code, no code space and came from that space because again, journalism major, what's up, and an art major that learned to code by being stubborn and figuring it out on the chaos route. So I tried all the no code tools. I've tried almost all of them. I've created content tutorials. I've actually written help documents for some of these tools. So flashback to previous jobs to pay the bills. My issue with some of them is compatibility. Because have you ever taken those tools and then been like, oh my goodness, this tool hasn't scaled? They're expensive. Like to scale a tool like Bubble or Adalo or even Airtable, to add the number of users is super expensive. And it doesn't often fit within a modern web stack. And it doesn't fit within another tool. That being said, I still use them. Like it's great for an MVP. It's great for getting something off the ground. It's great for really quick testing or being able to communicate to developers. However, like I do remember specifically there was a project I worked on in the low code space about 2 years ago now. And the concepts of code, I think, are more of a problem solving context. So like when it comes to databases, your database is a low code, an Excel spreadsheet. Is it an Airtable? Is it a SQL database? Like those are 3 different databases at different technical skill levels, but the content is still the same and the context is still the same. You need a first name, you need a last name, you need an email. You need to know where the data is coming from, whether it's an API, a Zapier, or a webhook, so on and so forth. But if you're missing that, I think sometimes low code or no code makes it so easy to just solve the problem without thinking about how your data is structured or the longevity of the tool, that it becomes really expensive. And so my grievances aren't with the tools itself, but it's more of I think it lets you skip some of the critical thinking process. That's my spicy take. Sorry, Sasha, if that's like too spicy or all of that.
I like that take.
Yeah, we needed the spicy pickle take, spicy relish. That was, wasn't it?
The spicy relish, the spicy habanero something. Something. Don't ask me. My brain's up there.
But I do think these, like, I'm curious. I've only really started to dig into like using these tools and see how it actually affects the way that I do my job as a DevRel. Like, I think for me right now, the biggest thing is like, the demo is usually the hardest part of anything that I'm, like, whether I'm doing a talk or I'm doing an article. Like, building that demo is usually the most time consuming piece, and it can help a lot with that because honestly, I'm not looking for it to do brain surgery kind of thing. Like, I'm building demos for people to understand how to do fairly simple things. I'm not like getting super complex, and you want to keep the demo simple so it's learnable. So Copilot's perfect for writing those pieces, or that, like, hey, how to ChatGPT generate me an app with Tailwind and Astro or whatever, and it's like, I mean, granted, Astro can do that, I guess. Bad example, but it just gets some of those pieces that I used to spend a lot of time, like even that design piece, like having it spit me out like the layouts and stuff like that is useful.
Yeah, I agree. I used Copilot to do like dynamic routes in Next.js. Like, someone was like, "We need this app already, Rizel, hurry up!" And I was like, "Oh man, I don't have a lot of time." And then Copilot just did it, and I was like, "Oh, perfect!" Like, this is easy.
I love Lucy's comment. You don't want people rolling their own brain surgery anyway. It's true. It's true.
It's true. I'd probably want someone like my brain surgeon should have a backup. It should not be me. Yeah, please, let's not get AI to the point of brain surgery.
Oh no.
God, no.
I don't know. In the sci-fi movies, it's always like a robot performing the surgeries and stuff like that, right?
That still seems scary to me.
It's true.
So the result, what is, like, when you think of like GitHub, like GitHub's another one of those things that intimidated the crap out of me when I first learned to code. I was like, ooh, it's scary. I'm not going on there. Yikes. I actually have a floater GitHub account that I forgot my login and password to from when I first got started. And like, my stars are a mess. My repos are all a mess. Don't look at my GitHub, everybody. But what really kind of, like, tell us about like what misconceptions you hear a lot of when it comes to GitHub.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I could talk about my own misconceptions before.
Yeah. I mean, even your own misconceptions.
Yeah, I did think just like you. I was like, this thing is scary. I think I made I realized that I made my account since like 2016. I don't think I knew how to code then. I think I just made it, and I was like, I want to learn how to code, and I heard people go on this, and then I there's no commits until 2018 because I was like, I don't know what the heck this thing is, and I like signed out. It does look scary. I think one misconception is that people confuse Git and GitHub. Like, they sometimes like bring me on to like give my expertise in Git, and I'm like, I work at GitHub. I could do as much as like possible, but I don't like know all the Git commands ever. It's just a tool that like allows you to visually see the version control, but not necessarily that. And then I do sometimes hear people say, I didn't know that GitHub had all these other like products and tools. Like, I didn't know it had code spaces or actions or security or whatever. Like, they just have been using it to share and collaborate on code. And I think I had that perspective as well. I think in my interview, they were like, what do you want to like work on when you get here? And I was like, open source. And I could teach people about Git. I know Git bisect. And they were like, okay, like, this girl does not know what she's talking about. But yeah, I think those are the misconceptions I hear.
I mean, to be fair, I only learned in like the last 8 months that Git and GitHub were two different things, because I always spin out of the other, and I was like, oh wait, they're different. They just go awkwardly hide away because I mean, I barely use Git commands. I still like it was a long time learning curve, and I was just like, GitHub is a place where you put your code.
Yeah.
I'll make a I guess somewhat embarrassing amongst a certain crowd. It might be embarrassing admission here. I can't do Git from the command line to save my life. Like not even basic stuff. Like I suck at even that. So I'm either using like in VS Code I use the integration. So where I use the what is it Git your app the GitHub desktop.
Yeah.
So yeah. Beyond that, like
GitHub
I mean,
desktop is
yeah.
like literally once I figured out GitHub desktop, I was like, I am a pro. It covered up the fact I don't actually know Git. I was like, cool.
Yeah. I had a good friend of mine who I actually got to see just a couple of days ago. He did a presentation all about like Git commands, and literally the entire presentation was him in the command line doing it, just showing you everything. Like, okay, so we're gonna do the. I mean, it was like it was brilliant. I was like, oh my god, like I don't know. I mean, he just spent like 35, 40 minutes just, and then the slide, instead of giving you slide decks, he gave you the terminal output as like this.
That's scary. That's hard to
I mean, I feel like my command line skills have gotten so much better, but I'm directly working with someone who like loves working in the command line.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten a lot better. And it's funny because like we'll pair together and I always laugh because I'm like, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm in Visual Studio with all my extensions, including the cat and like my pretty colors and like he's working completely in the command line. But it's had me a lot more like I feel a lot more confident just pairing with someone.
Yeah.
But again, do I use much any other like Git commands other than git clone? No.
I feel go ahead.
Oh no, go.
Oh, I was gonna say I've gotten over the years. I have gotten like more comfortable with the command line. I think one because I was in help desk, and that's like the most coding like thing I did. And then when I've worked at a couple of startups, and I guess like we didn't have like our what was it? I forget what it's called, our Git workflow in order very well. So like one guy, he came in and he was like, we got to get this together. And we like nicknamed him the Git-tator, like for dictator, but and he would do just like what you said with your coworker Erin. He would literally sit down with me and like make sure I like rebased properly, or he'll be like, you didn't use Git bisect, you should have used that. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is. So I've gotten like more comfortability with Git over the past years.
I was gonna mention speaking of being intimidated by the command line, which I've always been. Do either of you use Fig? Like I think of it like Copilot for the command line specifically.
Hold on, I'm like now like taking this down. Time out
for the command line. Just
yes, I know. You do have Copilot for the command line.
I love Fig.
But Fig is, I've been using Fig for a while, and it's like it just really has helped me be a little bit more comfortable in the command line because it gives me all the suggestions that I didn't know how to actually access before. Because I've seen people who are really fast on the command line and can get, have it like suggest the, folders or whatever, or commands and all.
Yeah.
Like they've got it all set up, and like Fig to me was like, was like command line for dummies, but.
So is it like warp.dev? Because like I'm obsessed with the terminal warp.
That is weird.
Which is like warp is like terminal, but it has Copilot built into it. There you go, and ChatGPT built into it. So GPT-4 is built into it, and their dev advocate, shout out Elvis, has turned me onto this like a year ago, and I have been a Warp stan ever since. I've even got some of my coworkers hooked on Warp because it has like if you are like I want to like the other day I was using it to build like an API like calling APIs from the command line. And I was like, I know it's curl, but like to do the thing that I want it to do isn't quite, I don't know it. So you can like search and be like API. And then it's like, oh man, awesome. And it just pulls up like all the different commands you can use with APIs. And it's like, and it's like, so
I think it's
warp.dev girly.
Similar. Like I know with Fig, like I'll be typing CD and then it'll like tell me, do you want to CD into documents or whatever? And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Well, and they
Nice.
even have like, you can add like pre-built scripts and things like that to it that I know people who know what they're doing like that. That's easy. But,
Yeah, not me.
like Lucia has her spicy take that it feels that the command
Yeah.
line Git sometimes feels like a time when it's a flex not to have an interface. Yeah, I think, look, I obviously love developers, but sometimes we like to feel smart by making things difficult. So
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting because I think like I've worked in, I'm taking the chaotic route to learning a lot of different elements of coding because I started in very front end and styling and CSS and like very, very front end focused. And then learned a lot of like templating languages and then moved to like a big API heavy calls and like did a lot of that. And now I'm in data and ML, which like a lot of those folks, like we have multiple people who don't use GitHub because they don't need to. Like they're building Jupyter notebooks or Jupyter Lab or very like Python heavy, which is awesome. But the workflows for each three of those groups are very different. And like working with developers now over those three different industries, like the tools are very different, the tech stack are different, or like even the processes are very different. And it's been very interesting, I think, because they all have their own quirks. And then part of me is like, all of you are a little bit nuts and all of you are a little bit wonderful. I think we're all a little bit nuts and respectfully in every right way or shape or form, especially me. So, whatever, we'll just leave that.
Summary of all developers and developer advocates, we're all a little nuts.
We're all a little nuts, TLDR. And we all have random hills we die on.
Yeah. I think that's, now that y'all say that, I think that's also part of my approach to devrel is like, these are things that people made me feel kind of bad about or wouldn't like break down to me because, they wanted to feel like they're the smartest. So I try to like go in with a like, we're both learning together and it's okay if you don't know. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's one of the things I love about your writing style and presentation style is always like, it's just really approachable.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
okay, I want to switch for our last final like little bit here. I want to totally switch gears and talk about, if you don't mind, about, well, Erin, you got COVID at a conference, and I was been bringing up how I feel like I've kind of come to deal with this like in devrel. It's like, okay, nowadays you go to a conference, you're kind of rolling, not just rolling dice. Likelihood you come home with something, and it seems to be like, I'd say, probably at least half the conferences I've gone to. I don't go to so many, but like I've gotten something. I've got both times I got COVID, I got it at a conference. So, is this the new norm? Is this kind of like just kind of come with the territory of being a devrel now? It's like we got to deal with, just accept that you got to go to conferences, and the conferences are going to get you sick. Even like PyCon, which had like, we don't know where you got it, but like
I'm pretty sure
a
it's
lot of preventative measures in place.
Yeah. This is why I'm an advocate for virtual or hybrid conferences. I keep hearing people say they don't like virtual because they don't connect with the people. I'm like, I feel like I've been able to connect with people in the chat when I do a talk, and then we all stay safe, and everybody globally gets to be able to have access to the talk. And if they weren't financially able to get over there, they can. But it does feel like something I guess we just need to accept, unless like people start changing things. I don't know. I personally don't like it. I have gotten sick one time. I haven't gotten COVID, but I did get sick after a conference, and I was like, I hate this. Like I don't like it. It's not fair.
But I feel like, it's like I've been beating myself up all week and like barely pulled the positive test yesterday. And that was like, I was texting every day. I was wearing a mask. I was super diligent on the washing my hands and everything. And like, it took me till Wednesday to even feel terrible. Like yesterday is when I was like, oh, I don't feel good. Like, and I think on the same spectrum of things, hybrid, we've been to a hybrid event, and like, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Hybrid events, when they're done wrong, and 90% of them, they're terrible. They're absolutely, they're worse. They're the worst of an in-person and a virtual event because the intention isn't doing this. And I'll actually specifically call out PyData Berlin, which I was at, which did an amazing job of the hybrid experience. So they had a Discord live during the event, and like it's still active. There's still people talking and making friends. They had a specific virtual channel. They had people who wanted to meet up were in different areas. They had groups that were hanging out together. If you had questions, they streamed the entire conference and then included virtual attendees in the question process. So it was like, if virtual attendees have a question, use this link and you'll get the live question answered to the participant at the same time.
That's cool.
It was super cool. And like, but like, case in point, I have not met either of you in person. Like, you could be talking to a robot for all I know. Like, you could be a robot. And like, I feel like I've connected with both of you through virtual events. So who's to say that we can't do that?
Yeah. It's just companies need to invest better on the experience for both. Because I agree with you. If it's hybrid, sometimes the virtual attendees get the short end of the stick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, as somebody who organizes events, like I've organized in person, I haven't done a hybrid, but obviously I do a lot of virtual ones. It's, hybrid is part of why they get it wrong. Is hybrid is super difficult to do. It just takes a lot more thought, and because even from a technology standpoint, it's just hard to get all the pieces together to handle both pieces. Because just doing an in-person one is extremely difficult. Online ones are difficult, but not nearly as difficult. But like combine the two together, and you've just it's now super complicated.
That's fair. I wish there was an alternative though to us risking essentially getting sick. And it also feels like we got to be at a lot of conferences, or at least maybe it's me setting myself up, because like at the end of every year I'm like, I'm not gonna sign up for a bunch of conferences, and then like it starts over the whole cycle. I apply to like a billion, and I'm like, I'm only gonna pick 4. And I'm like, oh, they accepted me for all of them. I think I'm just
no, that's exactly relate too much, Rizel, because that's the same thing. I was like, I'm gonna do less events this year.
Yeah. I got myself into that this year. Because I applied to a bunch of stuff, and usually it's like a lot of them just I don't get in, and then I'm like, oh, whoops, I got into too many this time. So,
but I think that's also, if you're managing a developer advocacy team or a community team, you have to be mindful. Like, my boss was very strict on, if you're traveling, do not feel pressure to work on a plane. And like, he was like, go take Monday, Tuesday off. He's like, I don't want to see you online. Like, I'm going to kick you off. Like, you've been traveling for a week, go offline.
Yeah.
And
that's
like,
good.
Expense COVID tests. He even told me, I was like, expense your COVID test, because we're expecting you to travel. So expense them.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. So I've kind of shared with you both a little bit, but as we end here, I will do my ghost pepper take, which is that I feel like, it is part of there is a lot of risk involved in events. And I do feel like it's hard in an in-person event to really mitigate that risk. So I feel like that a lot of times there's events like even PyCon. Again, we don't know we caught it, right? Like, so it might have been PyCon, might not have been PyCon, but there was a lot of, and I've been to a lot of events where it's like, okay, we're masking and we're testing, but then we have an in-person social event where everybody's drinking together and no masks, obviously. We have everybody going to the same lunchroom and having lunch indoors with no masks. And so like, and I'm not either, like, I'm definitely not like a mask, zealot, I guess.
Anti-masker, yeah.
And I'm also not an anti-masker. I'm like, I don't tend to wear one that often nowadays, but like, I'm definitely not. I feel like, people want to wear it, but like, I just feel like some of those preventative measures at an in-person event are just, it's really, unless you box lunch, tell everybody they got to take it outside or whatever, and nix the in-person events, the social events. It's like, I'm maybe wearing a mask in the conference room, but I'm sitting at lunch with the same 1,000 people in a big room with everybody, no masks on. So like, how much does that really prevent anything? I don't know. That's my super spicy take that somebody will probably.
My super spicy take is if you feel sick and I also think you do have a personal responsibility to test regularly. Like if you're choosing to be in public nowadays, especially for a conference for work behavior stuff, is A, test regularly, and B, employers should be taking that for that cost. Because those things are $20 a pop. Like that adds up. And I mean, I've been testing daily for 10, 12 days now. But I also knew the risk that I took being in person. And personally, I'm like, if you're going to choose to take that risk and continue to go out and see people, then that's fine. But like, I think even like your tests are still 2-3 days behind typically, but it's like, it's better than nothing. Like at least like, because I mean, I would have, if I wasn't testing, like I would have been like, I'm not that sick until I couldn't talk.
Yeah.
All right. So our final, Erin, I know you've been sick, so I'm assuming, we got to close out the show with the pickle fact.
I do have a pickle fact.
You have a pickle fact.
I did find one.
Okay.
Okay, ready for this? Rizel, did we fair warn you about this?
You've seen the banner, like, so it's all like we got the little.
Yeah, I know y'all do something about pickles. I don't know.
just so you know, it's become a thing.
So pickles will not prevent conference sick or COVID. However, 3 different people throughout history did consider them a treatment for very important things. So Cleopatra actually ate them because they believe that they helped keep her gorgeous. So pickles are great for your skin tone, obviously, as Cleopatra said, so just listen to her. And Caesar and Napoleon thought they could build muscle.
Okay.
Love it.
So I don't know if that's scientifically backed, but
I'm pretty sure it's not. But
some History Channel website told me that when I quickly Googled pickle facts today. And so obviously it's on the internet, must be true, right?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, let's just have to eat some pickles for the next week and see you can. You should do a test, see if it cures COVID.
Yeah, I'll be taking pickles every day and also coming out swole. Look out, everybody.
At the end of the week,
great skin. You'll be strong. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I need to get my pickle stock money here.
Yeah, we do need to. We need a devrel.
What is it? Vlasic sponsor me.
Pickles.
Yeah.
We should get Vlasic to sponsor this show.
Does anybody have a contact at Vlasic?
All right. Well, Rizel, this was so much fun. Love getting to chat with you. I'm glad that Erin was able to make it because I think we had a really great time. So, yeah. So before we check out, where can people find you?
You can find me at Black Girl Bites on basically every social media. Twitter, Mastodon, what else? Blue Sky. Yeah, Blue Sky. LinkedIn, my name is Rizel Scarlett. What else? Twitch, I'm Black Girl Bites 1. I always say this. I created an account. I got locked out. And then I just created another one.
Yeah, and I'm assuming on GitHub too.
Oh yeah, Black Girl Bites on GitHub as well.
Of course. All right. Well, thanks so much, Rizel, and thanks everybody for joining and for keeping the chat spicy. And we'll see you again next month. We'll check for details on cfe.dev for our next guest, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.